Hello friends, this video on respiration in organisms part 8 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. So the next important part of the respiratory system is lungs. So these are spongy elastic organs. As you can see here, lungs, we have a pair of lungs. So there are two lungs, one on each side of the trachea, and they are spongy. So they can not very tough and rigid, so quite spongy, soft and elastic, so they can expand and contract. So that elasticity is there, like how you have a balloon. So if you fill in more air, it will become bigger. If you take out some air, it will become smaller. So that's because of its elasticity. They are located in the thoracic cavity. So if you see this part is the thoracic cavity, below the head and between the before the abdomen. So this entire part is the thoracic cavity. So the lungs are located on, and if you look at their location, the lower surface of the lungs, they rest on the diaphragm. So diaphragm, the muscular structure which denotes the end of the thoracic cavity. So this structure. So the base of both the lungs, they rest on the diaphragm. So there are two lungs, right and left. Now, if you look at the internal structure of each lung, you will see that the lung is further divided into lobes. So if you closely have a look at the right lung, you will see that it is divided into three lobes. What are lobes? Lobes are nothing but, you can say they are like compartments. So inside your house, you may have 3 rooms. Inside your house, you also can have 2 rooms. So they are nothing but partition inside your house to divide it into different segments or different compartments. So similarly, the lungs are also divided into compartments. So the right lung has 3 lobes. So somewhat like this. So let's say this is the right lung and it is divided into 3 compartments like this. So what are these lobes? This is called the superior lobe, which is located towards the top side. This is called the inferior lobe, and this one is the middle lobe. So these are the 3 lobes on the right lung. Similarly, if you look at the left lung, you will see that there are only 2 lobes in the left lung. That is superior lobe and inferior lobe. So that is a difference between the 2 lungs. So both the lungs are not exactly identical to each other. So function wise, even though they do the same job, but internal structure and arrangement wise, they are not exactly identical. Now here another important thing to be noticed is when we talk about the elasticity of lungs. So this elasticity property is of great significance because these lungs are associated with the process of our breathing. Now when we breathe in air, so a lot of air is coming in, so you need some space to accommodate that air. So from where will you accommodate that extra space? So that accommodation is possible due to the elasticity of the lung. So the lungs can increase in size and it can, accommodate that extra air which you have breathed in. Similarly, when you breathe out, you are actually giving out air. So now you really do not need that much of extra space. Now since it is elastic, then it will again get back to a smaller size. So that elasticity gives this flexibility that it can, contract and expand depending upon the need. So these lungs are enclosed by a 2-layered membrane which is called pleura. So you see outside the lungs you can see 2 layers, which is kind of a protective layer, and the purpose of this layer is to prevent friction and for lubrication. So this is known as the pleural cavity. So all these organs are extremely delicate because you see lungs, they are going to perform the most important role during the process of respiration. So it is important that they are safe and well protected. So that is why you have this double membrane called pleural cavity. And this pleural membrane, so between these 2 layers, this area is called pleural cavity, which is filled with a pleural fluid. So this fluid will, add to the sponginess of these lungs and will also provide lubrication and prevent friction. So pleural cavity is filled with pleural fluid. So here you have pleural fluid. So this pleural fluid will prevent friction and provide lubrication and protection to the lungs. So these lungs play an important role in breathing and oxygen absorption. So they are not only important for breathing but also for oxygen absorption. So once we breathe, we just take in the oxygen, but that oxygen also needs to be supplied to the cells of the body. So that exchange, the exact exchange of oxygen also takes place within the lungs. So that is why lungs are the most important organ of the human respiratory system. The next part are the bronchi. So as I have mentioned before also, that the trachea, which was a thicker tube comparatively, it divides into thinner tubes called bronchi as it enters into the thoracic cavity. So you see, trachea, as it has entered into the thoracic cavity, it divides into comparatively thinner tubes, and these tubes will start entering inside the right and left lungs respectively. So these thinner tubes are bronchi. So if you see, the right bronchus divides into 3 bronchi. So on the right side, you see it actually divides into 3 branches. So they are nothing but these bronchi are just like branches, and they are like air tubes which carry air. So that's the simple definition of bronchi. And if you look at the left bronchus, it divides into 2 bronchi. So on the left side, you just have 2 branches coming in. So bronchus is the singular form and bronchi is the plural form. So these are the air tubes. And these air tubes, bronchi, will further divide to form even thinner tubes called bronchioles. So each bronchus further divides into finer branches called bronchioles. So as you can see here, this is the trachea. So this is trachea. So the trachea divides into thinner tubes called bronchi. And this bronchi further divides into more thinner tubes called bronchioles. So it's like a thick branch of a tree. From there comes up the thinner branches, and again from them comes up the even thinner branches. So that's how the concept of bronchi and bronchioles are. So these are like extremely thin terminal branches. In fact, if you actually look at its types even in more detail, you'll see that there also exists primary, secondary and tertiary bronchi as well. So we will not get into that much detail. So you can just understand that these tube-like structure, they continue to branch and they become thinner, and that's how they get these names, bronchi, bronchioles and so on. So these bronchioles are supported by incomplete cartilaginous rings. Now everywhere you see these cartilaginous rings are present, because cartilage, they act as connective tissue. They actually help to maintain the structure of that particular part or that particular tube, because it is important to maintain the structure of the tube. Otherwise, what is this tube? This tube is going to carry air. They are all air tubes. Whether you talk about a bronchi or a bronchiole or a trachea, they are all air tubes. They are all tube-like structures which carry air. Now, when air is not there inside, there are chances that it might collapse. So, to prevent it from collapsing, they are all surrounded by cartilaginous rings, because cartilage, it will give that stiffness and stability to the tube. Each bronchiole ends in cluster of tiny air chambers called alveoli. Now, if you look at the terminal end of each bronchiole, each of these thin branches, you will see that towards their end, you have some balloon-like swelling or balloon-like structures. So, these balloon-like structures are nothing but alveoli. So, alveoli again is a very important thing as far as the process of respiration is. Thank you. Please visit www.examfear.com to watch more educational videos with a better experience. Please do not forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for latest updates. Thank you once again.